start, please. Welcome all to the first Cabinet meeting of the new municipal year. Can I start with a few words and a few announcements? First of all, obviously we've got to keep the doors open for COVID rules. I apologise, Councillor Hinch, you seem to be sitting right in at the centre of graph, or perhaps given the heat it might be quite nice. Could you please keep the door open though and not close it? For members and officers, if you are to speak, could you please use the microphone? We have the press in the room and it helps the sound for those listening at home. I'd like to thank previous cabinets, and particularly members who are no longer part of the administration for their hard work. There's a lot of things that the council does. Whilst we disagree politically, we've all got Harlow at heart. And so thank you to those members of previous cabinets, and thank you to those who are here. I'd also like to thank the opposition tonight for attending. My intention is to run Cabinet in the same manner that it's been run in previous years under different administrations, to invite the opposition to speak a lot. I think this is a place to engage between the two political parties. I think this is a place to ask questions, and I would invite you to do so. I certainly exercise that right in opposition. I would encourage you to do the same thing. That being said, can I ask people in the chamber to all observe decency and common behaviour to each other? And hopefully we'll get through the agenda quite swiftly. Can I start then with item 1, apologies for... I do apologise. Before I go to item 1, there's one other announcement that I need to make, and that is that the next meeting of the Cabinet should have been on Thursday the 8th of July, but because the by-election falls on that date, we're having to move that forward to the Monday the 12th of July. And in mentioning that, can I ask you all to be conscious that there is a by-election campaign going on at the moment. Per the rules still do apply with the details that the Chief Executive circulated, and can people just be conscious of what they say if they risk breaching per the rules during the meeting. So item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any? No, I'll take that as no. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any? No. Item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 25th of March 2021. Now, although a number of us were present, none of us who are voting members tonight were, but can I ask for those to be approved?
Agree.
Adam, do I need to sign anything, or is that? That's fine. Okay. Item 4, are there any matters arising from the previous meeting? I'll take that as no. Item 5, written questions from the public. There are none tonight. Item 6, written questions from councillors. There are none tonight. Item 7, petitions. We have a petition from Mr. Hussain in support of local private hire and taxi drivers. I asked Mr. Hussain before the meeting if he'd like to speak, and he said no at the time. Mr. Hussain, do you want to say anything?
That's okay, thank you.
Okay. So we accept the petition, and can I ask both sides to get the chance to respond? I believe Councillor Perrin, you're going to respond from the administration. Can I go to you first?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Hussain, for bringing the petition to our attention. I take on board what it is you're asking. The Council is currently in the process of reviewing the criteria that we're applying to the ARG grant funding for small business and business owners. That work is currently underway and should be concluding soon. So I will bear in mind your petition whilst we review those criteria. In terms of your point about a reduction of all licence fees, I will speak with the relevant officers in the council and see what further assistance can be provided to you and your colleagues. And I would like to make the offer of meeting you and then other relevant representatives from your trade to discuss this further outside of this meeting. So I make that offer to you, and I'll ask the relevant officers to contact you and see what dates and times will be mutually convenient for us both. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Hicks, are you responding on behalf of the opposition?
Yes, please, Chair, thank you. And likewise, I welcome the petition and thank Mr Hussain for his engagement with this council. The original scheme of allocating grants focused on businesses with high and ongoing fixed premises costs, and this was in line with government guidance. As Mr Hussain points out, it was central government and not this council who decided on eligibility for grants. However, it was Harlow Council who revisited the scheme in late February, early March, and extended it to include a payment to taxi drivers registered with Harlow District Council and made grant payments from about mid-March time. Clearly, the revision and payment seem to have crossed over the period of the petition. But the caveat, of course, is obviously we would need, we want all small business owners to prove that obviously they paid their right level of government tax and obviously evidence loss of earnings where possible. Approximately 280 grant payments were made, which equates to 95% of licensed trade, and the remaining 5% have all had direct contact with the licensing team and made a personal decision not to apply for grant payment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr Hussain, for bringing that petition to the Council tonight. Please feel free to leave or wait and watch the rest of the Council's deliberations.
Okay. I don't know if I can comment or is it
I understand that it's one from each side of it.
It is only one from each side.
Perhaps, Councillor Andrews, you might wish to have a conversation with Mr Hussain. We then go to item 8 on the agenda, which is the forward plan, and whilst this is to note the forward plan and all of the upcoming Cabinet decisions, you'll notice there have been considerable changes from the previous forward plan of this committee. In opposition, I spoke at length about using the forward plan so that members, backbenchers, members of the opposition, scrutiny committee, the Cabinet Overview Committee could use this to guide their work plans, and I think it's really important. And I would encourage you all to study the forward work plan. It's not the final forward work plan. I'm sure there will be items added as the new administration moves forward. But this does start to outline some of the key decisions that we'll be taking in the coming 12 months. I'm happy to take contributions or to take questions if there are any on the forward work plan. Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome to your seat. Before I ask the questions, can I also welcome Dan, who's taken over as the Regeneration Portfolio Holder, and I just want to put on public record my appreciation and thanks for all the work that every member of the Regeneration team has contributed over a number of years that's actually made an amazing difference to our lives. And whilst I can't be there at the front, and hopefully Dan will be held accountable and responsible to take a lot of the initiatives forward. I've got 3 questions, if I may, Andrew, in relation to... Am I all right to call your first name?
I'm always
okay, fair enough. Okay. The first one is that I've noticed on page 19, 1012872, we've got the town plan that is scheduled to be coming to the Cabinet, I believe, draft for consultation. And I know that you've changed around, so I'm not entirely sure who I'm looking at Michael, thinking it may well be Michael who could deal with this. I was just wondering whether or part of this is what resources implications will there be, and actually what is it that we're hoping to achieve in relation to the town plan. And then I'll go on to the other 2, if I may, after that.
Thank you. So, Dan or Michael wants to say that first. It covers both of you, that item.
Thank you for your question. Yes, the town plan is quite a key document that we're going to produce. The aim of it is to pull together all of the separate parts that are going on in Harlow at the moment. You know, you have the Harlow and Gilstrap Garden Town, you have the Town Centre Action Plan, you have the Harlow Growth Board, you have the various funds coming forward. We're going to pull all those together to create a cohesive vision for the town, and then we'll decide where we're going to go. In terms of the resources for it, it's going to be a joint effort between planning and regeneration.
Thank you, Michael. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as Michael said, it's a document to pull together the dozens of pretty incredible government investments and other exciting plans, and it's going to set out a once in a generation programme or regeneration that we're looking for. And we think, as you mentioned, Councillor Durkin, that public consultation will be probably the most important part of that whole process. And we think that, well, as Michael said, that the resources will come from both planning and regeneration.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Durkin?
Well, in part, thank you, Andrew. But my second question is directly related to the first one. Is then on page 22, we've got the town centre master plan that is supposed to be coming to Cabinet, I believe, in October. As a result of the draft for consultation around a town plan, are we therefore now assuming that there's going to be a delay in the town centre master plan? Because clearly there may well be issues and items that come out of the town plan that might well affect the town centre master plan. So I'm just mindful, are we saying that we are now delaying the town centre master plan to allow the town plan to be considered?
Councillor Harlow, shall I come to you first on that, or Councillor Sauce? Who wants to go first? Councillor Sauce.
I don't think at this point we envisage a delay to the master plan. I think it's just a case that we don't want the tail wagging the dog, in that we want our vision before we move to the plan. Hence, October obviously comes after September, and the master plan will follow the town plan first draft, and we don't envisage a delay to that at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Harlow, you should add anything to that? Since it comes back in, no?
Sorry, Andrew, I'm absolutely amazed that what we're saying is that we're supposed to be having an open public consultation about the town. At the heart of the town is the town centre, but what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be talking about a draft consultation about the town plan 4 weeks before the town centre master plan comes before Cabinet for a decision. I think the general public will and businesses may well question the credibility of the town plan when actually the heart of the town is already going to be predetermined. But at the end of the day, I'll come back and challenge as we further go on. Can I just ask one more?
No, I'd like to answer that, Councillor Durkin. You've asked the question now, and I'd like to answer that. And I'll say, I would agree with you. I think the public would be very upset if things were delayed, and they would question the ordering of these things. I questioned when I came to the council why there wasn't an overall town plan, why there wasn't an overall vision to pull these documents together. I questioned why the town centre master plan isn't already in existence. I think you yourself were the portfolio holder for regeneration, and yet there wasn't an overarching strategy pulling all of these things together. I think it's a little naughty of you to come here and question the very first cabinet meeting about a timetable that you had direct influence in making over the past 7-8 years, and then to make a cheap shot like that. So whilst I welcome your questions, I'd appreciate you keep the cheap political shots out of the meeting.
With respect, Andrew, nothing I have said is a cheap political shot. I have been courteous, I have been respectful, I have been welcoming, and I'm asking questions. I'm affronted, with respect, Andrew, I'm affronted that you think, after the years that I've been, that you think I would use this as a cheap political shot. This is actually about our town, regardless of politics.
Councillor Durkin, this is a session for questions. I've not yet entered debate on the plan. I'm asking for questions. You said you had a third question, and I'm going to invite you to answer.
And I was responding to the insult that you gave me, which is my right and my entitlement. In relation to my third one, which is 10.12.854, and I know that currently I'm a non-executive board member
of the page, please?
Sorry?
The page of the item.
Oh, sorry, page 22. No, sorry, page 20. Sorry, and I was just saying, I don't need to declare at the moment that I'm a non-executive of that because that hasn't been appointed until the end of the meeting, but I always follow Joel, whatever he usually says, we all nod through over these particular issues. I'm just mindful that we are, an item is going to be brought forward in the near future about electrical vehicle charging points. And following discussions with HTS, I hope the Cabinet member will be considering seriously how HTS can facilitate support and develop that project. That's the end of my questions.
Was
You agree that's the question?
And would the Cabinet member like to respond, Alison?
Happy to, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. Yes, HGS, I'm sure will have a role to play in this. I'm looking forward to meeting with HGS very shortly on this and a range of other matters.
And HGS directly falls within, or the review of HGS falls within Councillor Charles's portfolio as well, so perhaps he might like to add something there.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the opposition members who attended the Strategy Away Day for HGS. I think we made some very good cross-party progress on the commercial proposition, the outline proposals and how we're going to take that forward. And of course, wrapped into some of the forward work plan considerations, particularly around the electric charging price, will be the move that is not reflected in the forward plan around the commercial proposition for HGS. And what we envisage and the runway for that in terms of the governance process is that will go before the shareholder subcommittee and then form part of any further discussions as we head towards the budget. But I very much look forward to engaging with all members on that because it's good for the town. The other point I would make to Councillor Durkin is this administration is not in the business of strategic drift, which was a issue with the previous administration. One of the hallmarks of our forward plan is a number of strategy documents very early on in our administration to get moving, to hand the priorities of this administration and take them forward in a structured way, which was completely absent in your administration.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back? Because again, it seems like, I don't know what's happened, but there seems some sort of heat or negativity coming towards me, which feels uncomfortable, but it's like, I've gone green. Oh. No, I just worked it out that it goes green because you press your... Yeah, okay. I'm happy to work with you, but absolutely in a constructive, as a critical friend, and absolutely you would expect, in exactly the same way that you did very well over a number of years, hold you to account and responsible. And that is exactly what we're doing. There is nothing wrong with what I'm asking. Actually, at the end of the day, it's about our town and what's best for our town. Putting politics to one side, I think we're all in this for one reason, which is to actually improve our town.
Thank you. I'm not sure if that was a question.
No, it wasn't.
It was more of a statement.
Yeah.
And I did say I was asking for questions, Councillor Durkin.
I agree.
That's why you're reflecting or feeling reflected a little heat there. More than welcome the opposition's contribution. I do want and welcome questions, but I'm looking for serious questions. I would expect my cabinet members to give serious answers.
Sorry, Chair, my question was serious. I'm sorry you feel that my questions were not serious. They were serious.
I think we'll have to agree to disagree there, Councillor.
Well,
are there any other questions on the forward work plan? Comments?
Question. I just wonder whether it would be possible to, in terms of these forward work plan, we have a sort of series of headings of decision title, but we have really no descriptor about what that decision is likely to be. So in terms of saying to people, would it be of interest to look at this or to look at this or whatever, other than just the title. So for example, Harlow Community Hub, there's an obviously a report coming to that, but I've no idea as yet what that subject is, other than the fact that Harlow Community Hub will be. And the same is true of each of those. So if you're in the know or whatever, then you may be able to pick up on that. If on the other hand you're not, then just I suppose what I'm suggesting is there possibly needs to be another column in here, decision title and areas to be looked at.
Councillor Edwards, can I just say welcome to the opposition. I had similar feelings when I was in opposition, and I was directed by the then leader of the council to ask questions about these things, which is why we always came to cabinet with a very large list of questions. If the opposition are saying they may find it easier to have some columns added here to aid them, I'm happy to do that. Can I also advise you to please feel free to email or pick up the phone to any one of the cabinet members in advance of the meeting and ask them to talk to you about the item and to give you a briefing. Certainly, I was entitled in a position to have all of my league members meet with the senior officers, and if you're not getting that, please do flag that to me, because I'd like to encourage you all as shadow portfolio holders to have regular meetings with the officers, with your portfolio holder if you wish, and to ask those sorts of questions so that you can come to this meeting forewarned, forearmed, and knowledgeable about the subjects that we're going to be debating. But if you'd like to suggest outside this room how you think this report can be improved, I'm more than happy to do that with you. You mentioned the community hub, and I think Councillor Charles may want to answer that question specifically.
Yeah, delighted on page 20 is the Harlow Community Hub that will be coming before Cabinet in September. The ambition of that paper is to embrace the volunteers, those individuals who went out and supported the most vulnerable people in our community during the past 15 months, and do something quite innovative with the Harlow Community Hub going forward. We will be consulting charitable groups, community leaders about how we take forward that ambition, because a priority for me in my community resilience role is to co-create certain master documents so that there is a conversation, a two-way conversation with the people of this town and this administration. So that paper will take forward and embrace the community effort, and it will potentially look at a procurement process to carry that forward. We will have more details in the coming weeks to share.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Councillor Edwards, did you have any further questions? Does anyone else in the chamber have any further questions? Can I move to comments? Does anyone wish to make any comments on the forward work plan? Councillor Dix?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And it was a little bit disappointing to hear the remarks from yourself about one of my shadow portfolio holders making, I think, quite sensible comments. And I hope that we can move forward in the civility that you suggested, and actually when questions are asked, and actually your portfolio holders actually had answers, and actually I think we didn't really need that. So I will express my disappointment with that. But I wanted to really just to thank council officers for the work they've done. I think sometimes as politicians we do go back and forth about, you know, who's to thank for what and who's to thank for this and that, but actually it's the officers that put so much work into that. And I should put on record my thanks to all the officers present and their teams who have done so much in putting this document together and previous documents. I won't say it in every moment, but I did want to put that on record. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other contributions?
Yes.
Councillor Edwards?
I'll probably take on board the comments that you're making, you made earlier in terms of consulting with officers, etc. We are, of course, already doing that, and I'd like to thank the officers for, you know, both their involvement and their responses. However, I also think, as I say, in terms of a document like this, I think the additional column, just with a brief statement on each one, just stating what the decision, as well as the decision entitled, what that decision, the areas of those decisions are likely to be will be helpful. I think it would not just help the opposition, I think it might also help members of the public as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. And to sum up then, I don't disagree with you, Councillor Edwards. I'm happy to talk to you outside about how we can improve not just the forward plan or any of the reports that the Council brings before. I know you have a wealth of administration experience, and now I look forward to tapping into that whilst you're on the opposition. I think the forward work plan we've laid out tonight is a really positive plan. It's got a lot of really great things from Harlow on it. I think there is a lot coming forward, but there is a lot of work to do. I would encourage members of the backbench, I can see there are at least two backbenchers in the chamber tonight from the scrutiny role. I would encourage scrutiny to embrace the forward work plan, to look at what you can take off it, to look at what pre-scrutiny in the council, which I don't feel has been very effective in the last few years. I would encourage pre-scrutiny, I would encourage backbenchers to look at these items, to engage with cabinet members, and look forward to the hard work we put in the year ahead. Can I move to can I formally ask that we note the forward plan?
Thanks.
Thank you. Can I move to item 9, the Harlow and Gilston Garden Town Sustainability Guidance? Councillor Harbour, I believe you're moving this?
Chairman,
yes. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Mike, would you like to introduce the item to us?
Thank you. This large document, which I'm sure you've all read in detail, has taken quite a long time and effort to produce, and I would like to put on the record our thanks to the officers. There is actually nothing like this in the country, so it is somewhat of a first. It's been produced by the Harlow and Gilston Garden Town team, and it has to be adopted by the three planning authorities really, so that's us, Epping Forest and East Hart. East Hart and Epping Forest have already approved it, it's now down to us. The aim of the document is to help applicants, planning applicants, to achieve sustainability in their projects. It's also there for officers to be able to assess sustainability of applications. And it's also there for members of planning committees to be able to decide and make decisions on applications. I have to say it's an excellent document. And broadly, it details all of the sustainability aspects of the project and gives it three categories. The first category, which is the minimum, is basically does it meet the building regulations, breeds, and the other regulations it's required to do. That's the minimum. The next step up is for the project to be carbon neutral by 2050, which is the intermediate option. And then the final option, which is the desired option, which we're looking for, is for carbon neutrality by 2030. So basically what happens is the applicant goes through and ticks off in the column for each of the elements, and then that's used by the officers and the members to determine how sustainable the application is. I said at the beginning that this is unique. It is so unique that the TCPA, that's the Town and Country Planning Association, are actually using this as an example. And I know this is happening because I was dealing with a proposed garden community down in Hampshire, and I guided them to this document, and they told me we've already got it, and we're reading it, using it as a template. So it is a good document. But for those of you who have read it, it is very complex. So there is going to be some training for members of our planning committee so that they can understand what they're looking at. So I'm happy to propose this to the Chair.
Councillor, do you wish to say anything at the moment, or do you want to reserve your right to speak? Okay, thank you. I'll open the floor to questions first of all. Are there any questions? I see Councillor Danvers indicating.
Thank you, Chair. Given the amount of emphasis on the climate emergency and so on, has the new portfolio holder, has he any comments in regards to the new road that's actually planned into Harlow?
Can I stop you there, Councillor Holloway, before you answer that question? Can I turn to the legal officer and just ask you to ensure that we're able to answer that given the current by-election that's underway, or is there anything that members should be wary of when asking questions or debating that item?
Chair, you are still yet to determine the planning application for that, so any comment should be made in light of that, so to avoid predetermination.
Okay, so any members of the planning committee need to be cautious on mentioning that. So, Councillor Harlow, would you like to answer the question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. Obviously, the guide checklist has not been approved yet, so it hasn't been used with this application at all. But I'm aware and have in fact been down to the site and met with the campaigners to look at this end of the link road. And I've said to them that I've asked officers to look and check that all of the proper analysis and evaluations have been done. And I will happily meet with them again to discuss it once that's been done. But obviously, it is a live planning application.
Any other questions? Councillor Pence.
Thank you, Chair. It was a very long document. You're right, Councillor Harlow. No, not quite as long as the audit report we all sat and read yesterday and discovered we didn't need to. And that isn't quite a political point because we all were quite annoyed about it.
I think everyone was, yes.
And again, these are just some technical questions just about the wording of the document, and if you're not the person to answer them, Councillor Harlow, I apologise, but I will raise them anyway. It's just page 49, it says about renewable energy, which clearly I'm sure everyone in the chamber would welcome. I just kind of the question is to what extent will new development rely on renewable energy? Is it an ambition or is it a red line? Because on page 50 it then says use renewable energy where necessary, and I felt that seemed like the wrong turn of phrase for when we're trying to ensure that we use renewable energy as much as possible, I would suggest. But I'll leave that to you.
Councillor Harlow?
Thank you, yes. The document's been drafted in light of existing planning law, so it can't specify anything that is not in the planning law. You'll see, as I said, there's three categories. Category 1 is mandatory. You have to adhere to the minimum. The next two are aspirational. There's nothing to force developers to do them at the moment.
Councillor Mills?
Yeah, one question, it may well be the same answer, but just obviously, and this did come from a resident who contacted me about this, on page 54 it speaks about flood risk, and I wonder whether Councillor Harlow or the officers might be able to explain a little bit more about what analysis has been done about this. I know there were some concerns, say from a resident who contacted me about flooding around High Corners, Edinburgh Way, and I just wondered if, what analysis has been done. And I'm not expecting you to produce a huge document, which is ambitive for me, about environmental issues today.
So, Councillor Harlow, you may want to split out the difference between, and let us know the difference between what's in the sustainability guidance versus anything else you can help us with there.
Obviously, the sustainability guidance is general, not specific. I don't know the answer to your question. I'm going to have to come back to you on that.
Thank you. Councillor Durkin, you were indicating.
Yes, thank you. And if I go back to my original question about the town plan consultation, I need to thank the Cabinet member for recognising the contribution that everybody made, including the former councillor Danny Purton, who sadly passed away and wasn't acknowledged at the time over this. But we know he was at the front of everything that was done about this. Will we have a conflict of interest here? Because you're talking as the Cabinet member that you want to do a town plan consultation, and consultation by its definition means that before any decision's been made. But at the same time, you're now approving, or you were hoping to approve this evening, this particular area that looks at health and well-being, renewable energy, economic growth, social economic checklist. Surely, I don't know if it was Andrew said cart before the horse, but surely you can't. Do you feel that there is a conflict of interest, whereas you're actually saying that you want to consult widely, freely and transparently about the town plan, when we're already knowing that you're going to agree the town centre master plan, and now you're agreeing this? Thank you.
Councillor Harlow.
Thank you. Yes and no. What if the guidance is quite clear in that it is stratified into three areas. First one being mandatory, the next two aspirational. And if you read all of the various elements, they are quite comprehensive and do cover just about everything that can be thought of in terms of sustainability, whether that's health and well-being or renewable energy. This has taken, I understand, several years to produce. So really, and it is a planning policy document that we have to approve for it to be a material consideration plan. But if anything comes out of the consultation on the town plan, which is groundbreaking and not in this, there is no reason why we can't amend it.
Thank you, Councillor Harlow. Are there any other questions? Councillor Edwards.
Question about philosophy, really. Given the importance of this issue, question to us all, I suppose, is that can we have a grown-up debate going forward so that we no longer have items of misrepresentation being put forward with regard to proposals. So, for example, when one talks about sustainable transport networks, they're not misrepresented as monorails and being told to the public that that's what's giving £100 million worth of monorails. So can we have a grown-up debate going forward on this? We will listen to what the proposals are. We will not seek to misrepresent your proposals, and we hope that you, going forward, don't seek to misrepresent ours. And that way, hopefully, the town can then have an informed debate about the future of the town, the way the town and the way that the town's needs are going to be met. Thank you. It's a question.
I'd answer that question, Councillor Edwards, and say I'm always up for a grown-up debate, and I'm always up for people not misrepresenting things, and I'm more than happy to state on camera to the press that are here that I'm very much against any monorail project. Councillor Edwards, please, listen to you. Would you listen to the chair answering? But I do think if we're going to have that adult conversation, we're going to talk about not misrepresenting. I encourage members like Councillor Durkin not to ask questions about carts before horse when paragraph A of the very report we're talking about talks about how sustainability ambitions were established under his previous administration when the Harlow Wilson Golden Town Vision and Design Guide approved on 6th of December 2018, the policies of the Harlow Local Development Plan adopted in December 2020, and the Harlow District Council Declaration of Climate Emergency that I'm pleased to say was supported cross-party across the whole chamber on the 11th of July 2019. And that these are mature debates to bring a report tonight, to bring this very important document before us, that relies on all that has gone before it. And so yes, Councillor, I'm always happy to have a mature debate, but that maturity must exist on both sides. So Charles, you wish to answer?
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to Councillor Edwards' point, there have been a number of conversations about a light rail scheme that was the ambition of the previous administration, and as we know, in Labour Party graphics that were posted at the time, a monorail type structure was posted on your social media accounts, which residents and politicians in this town coined as a monorail. And I am one of those people that followed what the residents said. The residents said it was a monorail in all shape and form. What then happened was a calling committee where the previous portfolio holder, who in fairness cannot be here with us tonight, was questioned about a light rail scheme. And again, residents in the reports that then followed by your Harlow were calling it a monorail. I believe in what residents said, and I support their concerns. And what we don't want is a monorail scheme in Harlow. And I know that there are further discussions to be had about the particular commission that the previous administration was putting forward with an econ, and there will be further announcements on that in due course of the permanent period.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Are there any questions further? Councillor Durkin?
I don't think you're going to get away with that missed opportunity of calling me childish. First of all, you say that my comments are childish. Previously, you said they were not serious. Now, you gave me a sweet at the beginning of this.
Councillor Durkin, I didn't call your comments childish. I believe Councillor Edwards called your comments childish. I was just responding.
I think we can always play it back if you want to, but you are quoting me in reference to that. You didn't reference any other councillor over these issues. So can I say, Andrew, I'm giving your sweet back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. That wasn't a question, and so we'll move on. Are there any other questions? I'd like to ask one to Councillor Holloway on this. You said in your introduction that this has been passed previously by the other two authorities. What happens if we do not agree this tonight? Where does that leave the Harlow Wilson Golden Town Development?
Well, as there are three planning authorities, the other two authorities will use it as a material consideration when considering their applications, and we won't.
So just to follow that up, the benefits of protection for things like environment, the benefits of greater sustainability, we can only access at this time in any planning application that comes before this council if we were to agree this document tonight.
Yes, and it's also another reason to adopt it is its aspiration to encourage developers to be more sustainable.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing no other hands for questions, so I'll move to the debate. Does anyone wish to speak in debate, please? Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, I have to say, I thought the olive branch that Tony Edwards gave to the administration was very reasonable, and I'm disappointed with the response, I have to say, Chair. If we're going to carry on calling it monorail, I think that's really disrespectful, not only to the former portfolio holder who certainly can't be here to defend himself, but it's actually not true. But if that's the way we're going to get going, that's absolutely fine. I'll bear that in mind for future meetings. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Any discussion that's actually on the paper rather than Councillor Harlow.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. I just wanted to make a comment about the document, which I am very familiar with because obviously it's been kicking around for quite a long time, and I think it is a terrific document, and I think it's a very important, aspirational, and as you said, I think Councillor Hardware, world class, or anyway, you gave it a recognition which I think is due and correct. And I just think it's worth making clear to the public that the great thing this brings to the town is cohesion across the whole town. So these are not principles which actually, when I was looking at it last year, I understood to be for the garden town developments. I now understand this is the new standard across our town. I think that's what's really exciting in terms of how this very ambitious program of growth that I think we're all very excited about is going to elevate the town. It's not going to create areas that are left behind. It's not going to create more desirable, more aspirational, more environmentally friendly areas. It's going to create a cohesive whole that we should all be very excited to be part of. So I think that's a really wonderful aspect of this that I don't think should be lost on the general public. It was lost on me until I came to review it again recently.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Not seeing anyone else, before I go to you to sum up, I'd like to say a few words. I'd like to echo actually a lot of what Councillor Harvey has just said. This document has been knocking around a few years in various different forms. The Harlow Garden Town has been well planned already. It's been under discussion, under debate and under agreement for a number of years now. I think as these things start to come to fruition, I'm pleased to see members of the opposition not walking away from the work that they've done previously. I think I'd like to thank the officers for the huge amount of work that has gone into this document, and that's officers not just in our authority, but across the 3 different planning authorities. I know this has been a great deal of debate, but it is a really big document. It needs to be, because if we're going to get the planning of our town going forward right for the next generation, and if we're going to see the size of growth to the north of the town that is planned in Harlow, we need to get it right, because we don't get a second chance at it. We don't get a second bite. And if you don't have a document like this that lays down the rules for developers, but also lays down the aspirations of our town, of our community, and indeed that of the neighbouring authorities, then I think it would be very easy for the developers to drive that. We talked about carts and horses tonight, but they could drive a cart and horses between the different planning authorities. I think it's really important that we get it right. And if that means that the buildings have to be sustainable, if that means the buildings not have to be, they should be sustainable, if that means the developments have to be sustainable with good transport links and well connected to the present building, the present tech, if the local heritage, a number of you I know I've bored you, I read archaeology at university, if the local heritage isn't protected, that would be a shame. If the environment wasn't protected as much as it could be, you're never going to be able to protect the environment totally when you build 12,000 houses or whatever the final figure is. But it is important that in the same way that Gibbard took time to plan our original town, any extensions to our town or any extensions within our town need to be planned appropriately, need to be guided appropriately by this authority. And the residents of the town and the future residents of the town need to know that it's been the best possible development it can be. So I welcome the report tonight, and Councillor Harlow, I'll turn to you to sum up.
Thank you. Just to clarify that a bit further, and you're quite right. Having said that the other 2 authorities have adopted this as a planning policy, it is only adopted for the applications that are around Harlow, that are part of the Garden Town, not all of their districts. Whereas in Harlow, this document applies to every application, as we are a Garden Town. So it's every new application will have to complete this checklist and demonstrate how sustainable it is. It is partially aspirational. Dealing with developers in my day job often, you say yes, you've got to bring forward a sustainable application. And their first question is, so what's sustainable? What do you want? And more often than not, local planning authorities say, well, you know, a bit of renewable energy in there, a bit of good connection. There's nothing kind of specific. So this document, I wouldn't say it's world class, but I haven't seen any others around the world. But it is very detailed and much more than I expected it would be. And this will please developers because they've got something in writing which has the parameters that they have to stick to or aspire to. So I see it as being a huge positive document for the Garden Town as a whole, which I hope will be successful and developers will come forward with applications that tick the second and third box, if not just the first, and that we start getting really sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you. The item has been moved and seconded. Can I see that it's agreed? Agreed. We move on to item 10, the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Policy, and I'll hand over to the portfolio holder for Resources and Governance. Councillor Hare.
Thank you, Chair.
Can I ask you to move it first?
Yes, I move the report.
And can I second it? Over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. As many members will know, having read this, this document goes beyond our legal obligations, and it looks to create a more robust policy around the areas of equality, diversity and inclusivity. Before I move much further on into the report, I would like to pay tribute to Francis Mason, former councillor whose work can be seen all the way through this document. And I will admit to coming in at the end of this policy is by no means my inception, but I wouldn't have given my endorsement and be talking to you today if I didn't agree with its contents. And so I'd like to pay tribute to her for that. And so too to the officers that have briefed me on the historical development of this work. So with that in mind, I'll proceed, Chair. So, as many of you that have probably read this document already know that the Council is obliged under the Equalities Act 2010 to have due regard to public sector equality duty. Our current policy, which was agreed in 2018, is limited in scope and only covers our legal requirements. And so the proposal of this policy is to go beyond that, and it does so by setting out three key policy objectives. And I refer you to those on page 78 of the document. And I'll just list them particularly for members of the public that might not have access to this in front of them at the moment. And that is to A, the council services are accessible to everyone and do not discriminate on any unjustifiable ground. B, the council services seek to meet the needs of our customers and local communities and can influence our services. And C, equality and diversity is championed within the council and workforce at all levels, is representative of the local community. There are a number of appendices that go alongside this document, and important is the Equality Action Plan. And the Equality Action Plan is designed because to make this policy more flexible and to move with the changing dynamics of the world, really. And so as things progress, more things can be added into the action plan, and it allows us to be more flexible in our approach to achieving those objectives. And contained within the action plan is an action to actually engage widely with all stakeholders across our town and our local community, and that is very much our way, and we will use our equalities engagement strategy to help drive that engagement further. So that is that. It also sets out in Appendix D, there will be a process for determining whether an equality impact assessment needs to be undertaken. Now, as you would know from reading the documents, an equalities impact assessment is not a legal obligation that we have to take, but the Council and I certainly feel that it is the most robust way of making sure that we are meeting our objectives when making policy decisions. This will be reported annually through the Quality, Diversity and Inclusivity Information Report, which will be produced to allow us to monitor how effective we're being. And again, the action plan will be looked at through the audit function as well, and so there will be constant scrutiny of this document and its actions, meeting those objectives as we go through the new municipal year. I think I'll pause there, Chair, because I think I've introduced most of the main items there, and I'm quite happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. I'll reserve my right in that. And Councillor Durkin is already showing the question.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. In relation to recommendation B, Russell, who is the Officer Equality Working Group? And in your opinion, is that the most appropriate group that should be dealing with this, or should we be asking for external, independent, impartial, non-political people to actually scrutinise this for us?
Councillor Merritt.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Durkin, for the question. The Officer Equality Working Group is made up of a number of officers across the authority, and they've had a large input into this policy initially. I have talked with Cabinet colleagues, and I've spoken to Councillor Edwards outside this meeting, and indeed the lead officer of the report. And I was going to bring this up outside this meeting, had you not raised this, but I'm going to ask the Cabinet Policy Development Working Group to also look further at this as well, to bring more councillors into looking at this and the action plans as well, particularly around the definition of what inclusivity actually means, because we acknowledge there's more work to be done there, Tony, on what do we actually mean by inclusivity. So certainly take the plan. And that is, if I may, it is contained within the action plan, so the policy itself is fairly robust in that regard, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, can I just come back for a second on that particular issue? I welcome everything that you're saying, Russell. I don't disagree, but the credibility of us as a council is going to rest on who are those people who are asking those difficult questions about us. And if we look around the room tonight, we cannot really say that we properly represent the community of Harlow. And I was just wondering whether or not my suggestion of asking independent, impartial, outside the council, with knowledge and understanding of people who come from different sectors of our society, could be included in that, so that at the end of the day we actually feel that actually we have served our community better. Would you consider that? That's the question.
I will certainly consider your point.
And I think Councillor Charles, who's the portfolio holder for the community, also wants to say something there.
Yeah, I think Councillor Durkin makes an important and powerful point, and it runs to the very heart of this administration for you to engage externally with people, because we don't always have the answers to these big questions. And so I think what Councillor Payne was rightly saying is that this is going to come out of a working group whereby recommendations can be taken forward to enhance this document. Maybe one of those recommendations is to look at some form of independent scrutiny. And I would certainly welcome that from the community resilience portfolio.
Thank you very much. Councillor Durkin, do you have a further question?
Oh God, no.
No? Okay, Councillor Harvey, I think I saw you indicating.
You did, and Councillor Johnson, I will just say that I think for this item it's unfortunate that the fourth person to speak was a woman, and I know you will understand that I am going to point those things out going forward. I am on the record after the local elections as making very clear the disappointment that I, as a resident taxpayer and of course elected member, feel that there is a chain, a decision-making chain that stretches from this chamber to Westminster via the County Council, and every single link in that chain is a white man now. And on behalf of every woman whose taxes are being decided by you, I ask that you take very seriously what I'm going to say. And that is, Councillor Morrison came to my house shortly after the article I put in the paper. And she knocked on my front door in some distress. And she said to me, "Janie, we are on the same side. We have to work together." And I said, "Yes, I think you mean we're women. And yes, we are on the same side, but we're not on the same political side, Colleen." And she said, "No, but we have to join forces. It's really important. We're having a committee. There's going to be a committee. It's on diversity and inclusivity. Will you come on it?" And I said, "Well, Colleen, are you the chair?" And she said, "No, I can't do it. I'm too busy. I've got too much gardening and I'm not confident enough. I'm new. I've never been a councillor before. I have to learn the ropes." And she said, "I'm deaf. I find it very hard to hear. It will be very, very hard for me, Janie. I can't possibly do it." She was quite overwhelmed at my suggestion that she do it. And I said, "Well, Colleen, I'm afraid that until you're the chair of such a committee, I'm not going to join it. When you're the chair, I'll happily join it." Now, my question is, what is the committee? I'm interested in it, and I presume it is going to support the work of this report or review the activities of the council in light of diversity. I'm not sure. I'm only repeating what she said to me on my doorstep. And I'd be very interested to know, and I'd be very interested to know who the chair is. That's my first question. I have another question. Thank you.
Thank you. So the committee I was talking about, the Cabinet Policy Development Working Group, is chaired by Shona Johnson, who is a woman.
Sorry, is that the what's the name of that committee?
The Cabinet Policy Development Working Group.
Okay, so the group that Colleen spoke of, and perhaps she was confused because she is very new. She said it's a diversity committee, and I mean I agree. I couldn't see it, so I wasn't sure what it was. I was only just it was only that she said to me.
Perhaps I can interrupt you. I don't think any of us knows what you're referencing. Councillor Morrison isn't in the chamber tonight to defend herself, so perhaps we can have a conversation outside. I'm not aware of any other committee that you're talking about. I am aware that we've debated tonight bringing this to the discussion of Cabinet Overview Working Group, whatever it's called, that I'm asking Shona to chair tonight. I will also respond to your question about there being white men here. Partly, I would love to have more Conservative female councillors. I've supported a number of people for election up and down the country, and sadly, not every instance have the electorate decided to elect them, and not just female councillors of other backgrounds. I will say something about you, Harvey, because you've asked about it, and I don't want to embarrass the lady by saying her name. I did actually invite a female member of my group to be part of the Cabinet. And I was turned down, and she said because there are members of the opposition who were the administration that have spoken down to women in the past in the chamber, and she felt that she didn't wish to serve opposite those particular members. And I won't name on either side. I do think we've got a great deal more to do to promote more diversity on both sides of the chamber, be it people of different races, religions, sexualities, genders. I think we need to be as representative as possible. And I think that only happens through the ballot box, through both political parties and other political parties encouraging people to stand. And I would encourage any person in Harlow that's watching this on the film tonight who feels they could stand up and speak for the electorate of Harlow to put themselves forward for election, to come and talk to the different political parties, because that's the only way we're going to increase the diversity of the chamber, is to actively recruit and promote those candidates. But at the end of the day, it's up to the electorate who they do put in this chamber. And I, as a new leader, have picked my cabinet from the best people available for the job. Not to meet any diversity quota, not to meet any sexual quota, not to meet any gender quota. And actually I do think there is quite a great deal of diversity in the chamber, but we could always do a bit more. Are there any other questions? Councillor Harlow.
Sorry, I said I'd have a second one. Councillor Johnson. On the point that one of your colleagues didn't feel able to step up to the Cabinet, I completely concur. It is incredibly intimidating and distressing, and I've not enjoyed it myself at all the last 2 years. My question is this. within the political parties, obviously there's a very limited amount to what, I obviously can't influence the number of women candidates in the Tory party. So, from that point of view, there is nothing that I can do in terms of that. What does concern me, though, and has always concerned me, is there are 5 senior management roles on this council and there is 1 chief executive. That is 6 roles. 5 of them are men. And what is this council doing to ensure that that does not go on any longer? Because I can assure you, to be a woman in a minority in those senior meetings with politicians is not pleasant. And we have a duty of care to change that. And I hope very much to see in the action plan activities and positive action, not just tick boxing, but actions that are going to ensure that we see 50-50 representation at senior management within, I would hope, this administration.
I'll come to Councillor Cranch to answer the specific in a moment, but if I can, I too am sad that I've inherited a senior management team that isn't perhaps as diverse as you want. However, I do believe in a meritocracy over just a tick box exercise, and I do think it should always be the best person for the job, regardless of sex, gender, sexuality, colour, race. And I think, we have a very good senior team of officers, and just because not all of them are women, or almost all of them are men, doesn't mean they're bad at their job.
This is the point.
And I wouldn't want anyone to mistake what you were saying and think that. That being said, I'll ask Councillor Perrin if he wishes to answer the specific of the question.
I'll answer the specific, and I'll reserve my opinions for the private section, Chair. If you return to
Russell, can you come a bit nearer to your microphone?
I should project.
Oh, excellent.
If I refer you to page 90 of the document under the Harlow Policies Action Plan, so it's objective 3.5c, I've addressed that very specific point, and actually this is one of the few things, Chair, that I have altered about the document itself, as well as the title inclusivity, which I thank the Deputy Leader for his input on. But under 3.5c, I asked that the following be put in. To ensure the Council has up-to-date information on the workforce profile and its workforce is representative of the local community that it serves. And the part I've asked for is that the review, to review the information gathered under 3.2, the published gender pay gap information on the website, to ensure that the opportunities in the workforce are indeed fair and transparent, in order to address the very point that you raised. So that is the specific answer to the question, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Perrin, and thank you for adding that to the document. Are there any other questions? Councillor Vince?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, let me say I welcome the report. Thank you, Councillor Perrin, for mentioning Councillor Mason in your opening statement. I wasn't going to mention this, but after hearing what Councillor Harvey had to say about her experience with Cabinet, I felt I have to share that Councillor Mason experienced similar issues at Cabinet, and I remember one particular Cabinet where she was very upset, and I feel it's certainly easy to tackle. It's not quite a political issue, you know that. It is about making sure that we can encourage people from all sections of society to get involved in politics, because actually by doing that we do improve the quality of the debate, of politics, of our town ultimately. I want to go back to talk about the staffing and the senior echelons of the council. And I want to pay tribute, and I don't want to embarrass her because I know she doesn't like this, but to Jane Greer, who I think is a real role model for women in our town, and I say that real strongly. And I sadly only ever got to meet with Jane virtually when I was portfolio holder, and I'm very jealous of Councillor Charles being the portfolio for community when events are actually going to happen. But Jane is a real role model for women in this town, and something I discussed with her as a portfolio holder, and I am getting to the question, I promise, was about an event where women that are at high levels within the council could actually speak to, and just some sort of event to the public, to other members of staff, to encourage them to apply for roles. Because actually, I think part of the problem is actually, Chair, that women don't feel they can apply for the senior roles. And actually, if they did, and there's an example right over there, Jane, doing a good job. So that's something I would really urge, that the administration, and as an opposition leader, we really need to support something like that. And something equally with the Bay Community as well, that would, an event that would encourage people from all ethnic minorities, all backgrounds, all genders to apply for more senior roles in the council.
I think your question there was, would we be willing to have a conversation with you about that? In which case, yes, I'm very willing to have a conversation with you about that. And if it's something that could be achieved cross-party without bringing the party politics into it, then all better. Any other questions? Okay, so we'll move from questions to debate. Does anyone want to say anything about the report? Councillor Vince, I'll take you first.
Thank you, Chair. I really welcome this report, and I hope you'll forgive me, Chair, I do want to pay tribute to Councillor Frances Mason. And I know her daughter is going to be viewing the video that your Harlow are going to put up on this, so I do want to mention it if you'll forgive me. This report reflects how much importance, rightfully, that Frances put on the topic of equality and diversity and inclusivity. And I hope this report and the implementation of it can be her legacy to the people of Harlow. In a small period of time as a councillor, and an even smaller period of time as a portfolio holder, she must have made such a huge positive difference to people. And I, for one, feel very, very lucky to call her not just a colleague, but a friend. And I thank you for your comments today about her, and I hope that we can make this a success, we can move it forward, and we do it together for Frances. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vince. And no apology needed to speak about the work and life of Councillor Mason, who, as you know, I knew since I was about 12, so was a fixture.
She did used to tell me a lot about that.
I know she used to say to me as well. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Downs, I think I can see you back there raising your hand.
From the 2 and 9s, Chair. Yes, Frances Mason on our endless Zoom meetings really kept us fully informed on this, and hopefully Zoom meetings will be a thing of the past. But certainly she was very persuasive until, sadly, she became ill and died. So I'd like to echo all of the sentiments. The 4 years I was on Essex County Council Chair, I heard David Finch say, "I've appointed the best people to my cabinet," and for 4 years, 9 out of the 10 were men. So not much is going to change here, I assume. So we're going to look forward to equality, hopefully, and I'm glad that Tories have actually taken this on board, and I thank them for that. But actions and words are two very different things, and hopefully there'll be some concession about this in the ranks both. I too agree. We perhaps let the side down in regards to the senior officers of this authority as well, but that needs to be addressed.
Charles?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Councillor Mason for her contribution. And I remember actually talking about the development of this policy when we were planting trees in East Park, and her passion for moving this forward, getting the action plan in a state whereby it had some real meat on the bones. And I remember that conversation very clearly. For me, the starting block with equality policy is that no one has a monopoly over what equality diversity should be defined as. You have to mould it with the community around you, and one of the features of this administration will be that we sometimes don't know all the answers to these types of questions, and that's why we want to bring in the community, engage with them to build out the action plan so that we can reinforce what the policy says around protected characteristics. And engagement will be very important, going across age, ability, race, sex, sexual orientation, and so on, so that we have a cross-section of opinion reflected in the action plan. The other aspect of this is some of the other groups in our town that should have a strong voice. Those with disabilities, those communities that are emerging in our town, all should be part of a collective voice that helps shape this type of policy. And hanging at the very top of this for the community resilience portfolio will be an ambition to further social inclusion more broadly, so that it complements this policy. Clearly, as Councillor Perry set out, this policy meets the public sector equality duty, the legal obligation, but goes further. And the feature of my portfolio in particular will be to celebrate those groups, to recognise and bring them into the tent so that we have a more rounded conversation in this town about those views that may in the past not have been as represented as loud as they should have been, but they will be now under this administration.
Councillor Charles, any other contributions? Councillor Perrin, you want to start off?
Thank you, Chair. So I thank all the councillors for their questions, and just to almost finish where I started, which is again to pay tribute to Councillor Francis Mason. I'm particularly pleased about the way this document is put together in terms of the fact that it has an action plan which goes with it that allows this document to have a longer life, to be more resilient, to flex and wane with the various competing future needs that many of us may not even have encountered or thought of yet. So that is the strength of this document, I also feel. And it will become embedded throughout policy making decision in the council, so it will not be a bolt-on, but it will permeate the entire organisation. And I think that is, again, another strength in going beyond our legal requirements. More broadly, I echo the points that have been made by the Legal Council and Deputy Legal Council in terms of the diversity comes in many forms and is not a monopoly of one particular group or party or person. That is why I have added 3.5c into the action plan, because I want to get under the skin of some of the concerns that have been raised. Why is it that there are fewer women in these top jobs? Because I think to artificially impose a quota is patronising and demeaning to the gender it seeks to support. And I think we actually need to get under and understand that. And you may be surprised to know, Councillor Harvey, that I was actually on the Women's Win March a couple of years ago when we were allowed to march legally through our nation's capital, and I was there at the front of saying the Tosvig and the like, holding the banner, because I think that there is a lot of work to be done, so I do champion that, and I think everyone's contributions. And so, Chair, I move the recommendations on the front of the report A and B, that the Equality and Diversity and Inclusivity Policy attached as Appendix 1 to the report be adopted, and B, through the Officer Equality Working Group, the Council looks at what inclusivity means for Harlow and develops the action plan further to reflect this. So I move those, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I see if that's agreed? Agreed. Thank you, Councillor Perrin. We now move on to item 11, which is portfolio holder delegations, which I'm going to move, and I'll see the seconder for. Thank you, Councillor Harlow. I can see the hand. This is an important document, although each administration will tweak this and change it slightly. We've laid out the areas of responsibility within each of the portfolios and some key strategic policies and areas of focus for this coming year. That doesn't mean that those key strategic policies and areas will not change in years to come to reflect the changing nature of the town. Does anyone wish to ask any questions on it? Councillor Durkin?
Yes, if I may, Andrew. It's of course it's my favourite subject, regeneration and Dan's portfolio. There's three particular questions. I note that part of his role is Harlow focused growth for Princess Alexandra Hospital, and I would welcome an early exchange with him about what contact has been made, because historically it's always been a challenge over those particular issues. I also noticed that you're going to be key strategic policies and areas, which is levelling up fund, which was the application that we were making and which is due to go out, and if successful it will produce £20 million to bring into the town. But it doesn't mention the town fund bid that we were successful for, that we did put in, and it was agreed for £25 million, which is actually about the regeneration of part of the town centre. So if you're not doing it, who is? And then also I just noticed at the bottom of it, cycle tracks. And clearly, historically, Dan, you may not know this, the council only owns a very small amount of cycle tracks, whereas actually most of the cycle tracks that have been unfortunately not as invested as perhaps we would have liked are actually owned, managed and supposed to be repaired by Essex County Council. So I'm wondering, why has that fallen out of the environment and has happily landed in your portfolio?
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. You changed your stance from taking a question at a time and now asking batches of 3.
Well, it's then at least I'm not being called childish or silly, so that's the way it goes.
The questions were engagement with Princess Alexandra Hospital, the levelling up fund versus the town fund, and the cycle tracks.
Yeah, and thank you for the plethora of questions, Tony. The first one, the hospital, I'm glad you've highlighted another government investment into the town, of course. And prior to this role, I've always had a very good working relationship with the hospital in a day job, and I have no doubt that that will certainly continue as the £598 million comes into the town. You mentioned the town fund. I know you're a stickler for detail. It wasn't 25 million, it was 23.7 million, but nevertheless will do incredible things to the town. And I can assure you, whilst it may not be on the sheet of paper I'm actively working on to make a success. And cycle tracks, I'm absolutely delighted that you highlight cycle tracks, because I think perhaps to understate the point, we may have a slightly better working relationship with Essex County Council than the previous administration did, and therefore I have no doubt that rather than blaming Essex Council, we'll be working to make the incredible cycle track network we have not just the best in Europe, but I have no doubt best in the world, and I look forward to working with you on that.
Councillor
could Dan just clarify, because what he's just basically said is the reason why our cycle tracks have been underinvested is because we had a different working relationship, which I assume means that it was Labour controlled. Is he now confirming on record that actually the reason why our cycle tracks were not invested in is nothing to do with anything else but a political choice of Essex County Council? If so, that is a scandal.
I don't think that's what you heard Councillor Saul say. I have
Yes,
to say,
we did.
I don't think you can ask.
Yes, we did.
I don't think you can ask Councillor Sauls to account for Essex County Council spending money, as he's not an Essex County Councillor, but I will ask him to answer the question for you.
I did think you had a slightly better grasp of the details, Tony, because that's not what I said, but I have no doubt that we'll be working much more closely with Essex County Council, not to moan about the state of things, but to improve them.
Councillor Danvers, you were trying to say something?
Yes, Chair, it's really open to a legal challenge if, in fact, because we were a Labour authority, our roads and cycle tracks were not being repaired.
Sorry.
This is an absolute scandal. It's the first I've actually heard of it. I thought, in fact, at least our Tory county councillors were honourable people. I was surprised that our roads have not been repaired, and then suddenly, 1 week before a by-election, suddenly Momples Road and Manston Road are being repaired just 1 week before the by-election. Is that a coincidence?
Sorry, so I think the question was the road being repaired a coincidence? I can't speak to Essex County road repairs, as I'm not an Essex County councillor. I know they do have a rolling programme of repairs, and I know members from both sides of the chamber have lobbied Essex County Council hard for repairs to both cycle tracks, pavements and roads. Certainly I can tell the councillor that my very first formal meeting once I became leader of the council, the morning after annual council, was with Lee Scott, the incoming highways portfolio holder, to lobby him to fix as many of Harlow's roads, cycle tracks and pavements as needed fixing, and to prioritise Harlow for investment. So I can't speak for Essex County Council. I can tell you that we're doing a sterling job at lobbying Essex County Council straight away. And unfortunately, the door doesn't open any faster for me as a Conservative leader than it did for me as a Conservative opposition leader. I suspect the new leader of the council finds my engaging manner far nicer than the previous leader of the council's not engaging manner. But I'll turn to Councillor Saul to see if he wants to answer the question any further.
I know Councillor Danvers will know the working ins and outs of Essex County Council particularly well, and know that the planned resurfacing on Momples Road and the other roads he mentioned are planned well in advance of when they happen, not in any relation to a by-election. Of course, I come back to what Councillor Edward said earlier about not intending to mislead anyone. The only thing I would possibly infer that Councillor Durkin or Danvers are misleading on is that the cycle tracks are going to get any worse under our watch, because as I said, they're not going to be less cycle tracks in Europe, they're going to be less cycle tracks in the world, and it's going to be an incredible network that we can all be very proud of, and I very much look forward to the moment that Councillor Durkin and I can crawl into the Lycra and cycle down the freshly laid cycle tracks whilst Councillor Danvers trails behind.
Well, that'd be lucky because
Sorry, I don't want to lose this. I know it's Dan's first meeting, so I don't want to put too much pressure on you, but you absolutely did say, and I think you either need to amend that or withdraw it, but you have said, and it is going to be on public film, that you have said Essex County Council have not invested into the cycle tracks because you're going to have a better relationship. Well, if that's what the general public want to hear about what you're going to do, then I'm really sorry this is your first meeting. I'm giving you an opportunity to reflect on that, but if you don't want to take it, that's your decision.
No, I appreciate in the olive branch, well, it's quite a large olive branch actually, you offered out, Tony, and I appreciate the way in which you've conducted yourself, but I don't think that's what I said. But if you want to talk about the general public, of course, they had a vote on who they wanted to lead the town on May the 6th, and that's probably why we sat in these chairs and not those ones.
Councillor Edwards, you had a question?
Question and a comment following up, really. And I suppose my question is, will the portfolio holder be asking the Conservative Party to withdraw their statement, which is in their election material, where it says, Harlow used to be a place of pride with immaculate streets. The old council, meaning the district council, let that go. I'm sorry, in terms of the streets, we've been talking about the streets and the state of the streets and the state of the cycle paths and the state of the whatever. That is a county council responsibility. So why are you seeking to mislead the residents of Harlow into somehow or other this is a district council responsibility? That's the sort of childishness that I was referring to earlier on in the debate, where there's a conflating of statements, there's a conflating of responsibilities, all with the intention of actually misleading the people of Harlow. And the statement in here is a deliberate misleading and needs to be withdrawn. And I hope that the portfolio holder will call upon the Conservative Party to withdraw this statement.
Councillor Edwards, I'm not sure how that is a question about the areas of responsibility for the portfolio holder that's before us tonight, but perhaps I can paraphrase it. Cycle tracks, Councillor Swords, are on your area of policy. Why is that?
Because as I said, we're not going to make them the best cycle tracks in Europe, we're going to make them the best cycle tracks in the world, and we will take responsibility as elected representatives of Harlow to make it a better place to live, not just pass the buck to other people.
And can I ask my own question, Councillor Swords? Cycle tracks is on here, although there's been comment around the chamber that not all cycle tracks belong to Harlow Council. Are there any cycle tracks that belong to Harlow Council?
Large elements certainly do.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perry.
I'd like to ask Councillor Swords a question. Does he believe that engagement
Sorry,
with
Russell,
other,
we can't hear you at the back.
Does he believe that engagement with other authorities other than our own is much more preferable than protesting at them? And does he feel that by engaging with them, it's a good idea to have actually decided who is going to be the person within the cabinet to engage with them? Just wondered his thoughts on that.
Well, it's okay.
I would love to detail who in the previous administration was responsible for doing such a thing, but I couldn't possibly name them. But in answer to your direct question, I think you're correct.
Thank you very much.
The man can't be named.
Councillor Downs.
Could I be helpful? When Mark Ingle met with the then person who was responsible for Harlow's roads and cycle tracks, who is now the leader of Essex County Council, Kevin Bentley. Kevin Bentley is on record of making endless promises about repairing Harlow's roads. He even promised to actually come and see them for himself, and never did. And now he's the leader of Essex County Council.
You appear to be making a past political statement.
Absolutely.
What is the question that you wish to ask?
I've made my point, Chair.
There being no further questions? There being no further questions, do we need to have a debate on this? Does anyone want to say anything on it? More than welcome to, Councillor Williams.
No, just winding you up, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I was a little disappointed to hear your unnecessary comment from the Chair about the previous leader of this council. I find the former councillor very engaging, and he was very engaging in Essex County Council, as Councillor Dance has pointed out. I note that the new leader has agreed with him in terms of portfolio holders, that there should be separate portfolio holders for regeneration and growth, and we agree that it's two very important points moving forward, which we've mentioned previously. I'm saddened that the role of equality and diversity, which was part of Councillor Mason's role, feels has been sort of swallowed up by the finance portfolio holder. I'm slightly concerned about that. I'm not concerned that Russell's doing it, by the way, and again, working his comments earlier. I'm just concerned he's got a lot to do, and I'm just don't want it to be, at the back of people's thoughts. And I look forward to seeing the cycle pass.
Yeah. Thank you for your contribution.
Best in the world.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, one of the first ambitions of this administration was to try and every single portfolio holder's strategic vision that equalities and promoting that should be ingrained as part of a cultural shift, because that's how you get the kinds of changes you want. And that's the kind of foresight and leadership that this administration will have to bear on some of these bigger strategic items. Again, the previous administration didn't do the strategy. This administration will get the detail done, and we will make this town, as councillors have said throughout tonight, one of the greatest in terms of infrastructure, one of the greatest in terms of community co-living, one of the greatest to bring up your family. In other matters, and in fairness to Councillor, he makes an important point around engagement with PAH. What I would also say to him is, most of my meetings recently have been in engagement not only with PAH but the CCG as well, and with other health leaders in this sphere of strategic influence, because there are a range of health matters, notwithstanding the new hospital, that we need to champion alongside the vaccination rollout for younger people, which is an absolute priority for this administration going forward. The vaccination rollout is moving at a very successful pace, and that is because of the work of officers in this council, with the administration and our health colleagues, who are true heroes in making sure that people are vaccinated, and that, of course, has led to more lives being saved. And that should be one of the priorities that we should really be talking about and debating tonight, not quibbling over dotting the I's and dotting the T's of certain documents, but thinking about the bigger picture, saving lives, getting people vaccinated, and making this town the best place to live in the country.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Councillor Dirk.
Sorry, two particular points. Three of you have said that you want to make the cycle tracks in Harlow best in the world. Can I challenge you to tell me when they're going to be the best in the world, please? And I also note that whilst we are concentrating on acute hospitals, it's also equally important that we care for more people in their homes, in other areas such as nursing homes, and people with mental health issues. It's interesting that the regeneration portfolio is looking at a building, which is the Princess Alexandra, but we as a community should be looking at the service provision that is being provided not only by Princess Alexandra, but provide an EPUT who support the mental health provision within our area. So I hope it is a collective. Because of my background, I will work with you, I will support you, I will advocate for you. But let's remember, this is not about a building, it is about the health and the welfare of our community, whether or not they're in a building or in their own home or out on the street. Everybody under equality is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. And that actually segues very neatly into my summation. I think you may have misunderstood the areas of responsibility, and certainly the building and the regeneration and the site does fall within the regeneration portfolio of Councillor Swords' responsibility. But if you look at the key strategic policies and areas for my deputy, who is also the lead on community resilience, you'll see the very first item on his key strategic policy areas is health, mental health and wellbeing strategy for the town. And I understand that we're bringing a report on that later this year, and I think it is really important to separate those two. We don't want the health, mental health and wellbeing of the town to be muddled with the details of a building or a planning application and a regeneration of a site or whatever that site may be, and the access to that. I think they are two very distinctly different points and dealt with by two different portfolios. Turning to the comments by Councillor Vince, yes, I do agree with the previous administration that regeneration is one thing and strategic growth, as I've called it now, is another thing. And I think looking at the strategic growth portfolio with the wide amount of work that is going on at the moment with the Harlow, Wilson, Golden Town, but also with the UK Innovation Corridor, with the Growth Board, with the potential to bring, as we passed the cross-party motion a number of years ago, Crossrail 2 when that comes to fruition to the town. We're looking at the twin tracking of the West Coast Main Line. We're looking at improvements to the M11 with the new junction that the investment is going into. I think there is a really large portfolio there in strategic growth, and that's why we have fleshed it out as such. Councillor Charles has already dealt with the issues around equalities and diversity. There seems to be this view from the opposition that just because the portfolio has disappeared, the work has disappeared. It has not. It is being fully embedded in every portfolio holder's vision, as Councillor Charles said. And I think, as we've proven from the debate that we had tonight, and indeed the inclusions to the action plan and policy that Councillor Perrin brought, we're able to deal with those items at the moment. If I feel the need to bring other talents to the table, I will do so. But one of my priorities was also to reduce the number of portfolios that we have, as I announced at the council. We have one less portfolio holder than the previous administration, costing the town less but getting the job done. A comment on leadership style. Yes, I do think it's important that a leader of a council or indeed a cabinet member can engage adequately with other bodies, be it the hospital, the CCG, Essex County Council, our partners over the border in East Herts or Hertfordshire County Council. And I feel that this administration will bring a fresh approach, a different approach, and one that I believe will be more successful in everything we do. That being said, can I ask members?
Sorry, Chair, you missed. Sorry, Chair.
No, I've summed up.
Well, you may have summed up, but you've missed out an important point. A question was asked about when will our cycle tracks be the best in the world.
Councillor Durkin, I've summed up. The debate comes to an end under the rules of this chamber.
So you don't know.
I've summed up. The debate comes to an end. Can I ask if the portfolio holder delegations are agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. I move to item 12, the appointment of Cabinet Working Groups, panels, partnership bodies, which I'm happy to move. Can I see a second of that, please? Councillor Perrin. Does anyone wish to ask anything about this? They are just appointments and are normally just taken as agreed. Can I see them agreed? Agreed. Item 13, we have communications from committees, working groups, parties and panels. Quite unsurprisingly, since they've only just been appointed and haven't yet met this municipal cycle, we have none. The minutes of panels and working groups, item 14, I propose to take A and B together and to seek Cabinet's permission to note those. Thank you. Item 15, I haven't been notified of any matters of urgent business, but the members of the Cabinet have any? Thank you. In which case, at 21:04, can I thank you all for your attendance tonight, both Cabinet members, opposition members, officers, and members of the public and press. All have a very safe journey home and a lovely rest of the evening.